christiangeekcentral.com. Do you like games? I like games too. I like games too.
Hey, I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. E3 2017 is just over like a week and a half away, and there is so much potential for big announcements, surprises, disappointments. I thought I would share my wish list for the big gaming publicity event, and then near the end, some wishes from those of you on our forums at christiangeekcentral.com. Now, I want to be clear, these are wishes because I'm not in the know enough to make predictions, but despite the fact that some I think are realistic and some are just ridiculous fantasies, I don't rule out any of them because I think they're all at least remotely possible. After all, some of my wishes from previous wish lists of E3 have actually come true. So let's get into my wishes for this year's E3. First, I want short wait times. The space between a game's announcement and its release, I prefer to be as short as possible. 6 months or less is really my preference. And if it's going to be 18 months or more, like a year and a half or more, wait until next E3 to tell us about it. I don't want to hear about it until then. I'd prefer to have no CG trailers without gameplay footage right on its heels. If it's just a CG trailer all by itself, I don't know what this game is, I don't know how it's going to play, I don't know what this experience is going to be, or if I should even get excited about it, whether or not it's my type of game. I don't know any of that. So really give me gameplay and show me what these games are, especially if you're going to deliver a CG trailer. Follow that right up with gameplay footage. I always love it when video game companies show some transparency and just some integrity, when they acknowledge maybe some missteps of the past. Sometimes that's done in a very subtle way because they don't want to really kind of admit defeat. But I think the more they can go in the direction of transparency and just acknowledging some missteps, I think goes a long way toward gaining credibility with their fans. And then also just integrity in general in terms of fulfilling promises that were made in the past, And I know it's not always possible, and hopefully going forward, what we'll see is they, make fewer promises that they're not absolutely confident that they can keep. So in general, I guess what I'm asking for there is just being real with us. And I know that's really hard from a marketing standpoint, and it's not always the most practical choice, but it's something that I really appreciate. I'd love to see more experiences in general that will entice core gamers to spend time with others actually in person, couch co-op, or if you could somehow figure out the magic of making a party game that will appeal to both casual and core gamers at the same time. But I would love to just see a return to this kind of in-person social gaming. I think real in-person relationships are so important, especially as Christians. That's something we really want to be investing in. And so to have games that encourage not just online play, but in person, in the same room, hospitality, inviting people over to your home and having them in the same living space with you for a little while to hang out and play games, that's huge relationally. And so I'd love to see more experiences that will kind of create an opportunity for that. I'd love to see game stories that validate the worth of human life and relationships, but without catering to those who would maybe be seeking their identity and self-validation in games. And I guess what I mean by that is diversity for diversity's sake would be one major example. Diversity is great in a game that is set in something like our real world, as it kind of represents the diversity of people types and ethnic groups that we experience. And so it makes the game kind of more realistic and relatable in that sense. But I think for us to go beyond that and say, I want my demographic, however I define myself, to be represented positively in a game, I think is to look for something in games that games should not be expected to give us, and that is validation of our self-worth. Our value comes from the fact that God made us to in some way reflect who He is, and then He became one of us and suffered in life and died horribly in order to rescue us from an eternal death separated from Him. That's what gives us our immense worth. I don't think this will be necessarily a problem this year, but I always like it when companies avoid gimmicks and trend chasing, whether that's motion, control technology or VR or something like that. I'd love to just kind of see those kinds of gimmicks downplayed as much as possible. If they want to, show briefly kind of what they're working on, that's fine. They have to push the technology forward, I suppose. I just don't like a lot of time to be spent there. Once again, I just would love entertainment, well-crafted shows, surprises, and/or these kind of outrageous, audacious moments and quotes, shocking. But I'm not looking for like jabbing of other companies or kind of an arrogance, and I certainly don't wish like failure or humiliation on any of these guys. Despite the fact that they can sometimes come off as like slick used car salesmen, they are, I think, out of their element when they're getting in front of these crowds and trying to talk. And these are businessmen, and so a lot of these guys, especially like the developers getting out front, they are out of their element, and so I feel sympathy for them. So I want the shows to go well. I don't want anybody to crash and burn, and yet at the same time, it would be neat to see these kind of like really shocking, surprising, outrageous moments that we can talk about at the water cooler the next day. Now, I feel like for my taste, it's been a while since we've seen this, but I want something that is like legit cool, that is said to be available now from some big stage presentation. You can go and download it right now. Something that I would legitimately like to get, as opposed to kind of some artsy thing like Flow or Flying or whatever that thing was that Sony had a couple years ago. This is a recent addition to my wish list. I want an open city Terminator game. Would somebody make that? As I'm playing these open world action games so often, the mission is to just go find this person and take them out, And so I'll be going around in like Saints Row games and I'll just start singing. I don't know, can you sing? It's just rhythmic, but I'll be like and I totally get my Terminator vibe on. How has that game not been made yet? To be a Terminator and just have an open city and you have these targets that you're supposed to go and take out. Somebody make that game. Finally, I want someone to spearhead a game design revolution that I'm going to call failure adaptivity. And in other words, this is where when you fail at something, instead of like going back and repeating material, like say an insta-fail stealth mission, you're spotted, start over, or falling into an eternal pit like in Mario and dying, you died, start over. Let the game world in some way react and allow you to keep going forward despite the fact that you failed at something. In the real world, when I tell my wife I'm going to go to the grocery store, I should only be about an hour. Then if I fail to be back in an hour, then I don't get warped backward in time and have to do all my grocery shopping again because I fell short of hitting that 1 hour timer that was counting down. No, instead, my wife goes, "Where were you? I needed the car to go so and so." So there's some kind of change that happens. There's a reaction from the world to my failure. I want to see more of that in games instead of failure states setting us back. All right, so that was my largest category. Now we're going to get into the smaller categories that go studio by studio or company by company. We'll start with EA. I was really disappointed with their press conference last year, so I'm hoping for something that's more engaging and that will connect with my tastes more this year. I'd love to get a Star Wars KOTOR-like RPG, whether that's Knights of the Old Republic 3, or it's just something that is like that, this kind of like action RPG type of thing. I'm not a big Star Wars fan anymore these days, but I like sci-fi, I like laser swords, I like weird magic, telekinetic stuff, so I'll play that game. Just make it a cool action RPG and I'm in. Single player, no MMOs, please. Now this is like a crazy long shot. I want a sequel to Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning. EA, I think, was involved as the distributor. I'm not sure, maybe the publisher, I can't remember, but they had like a big hand in getting that game out. Now that studio has shut down. I think the intellectual property is owned by the people of Maine or something crazy like that. EA, rescue that property and just keep the engine, keep everything the same, and just give us a new campaign. I mean, oh my gosh, that seems, I don't know anything about business, but that seems like it would be, a pretty good investment. You don't have to remake anything from scratch. You've got this really cool engine with a great combat system that a lot of people really enjoyed. Come on, just give us that sequel. BioWare, oh man, they got this new intellectual property that they haven't revealed yet. I just want them to make me believe again. I mean, these are the guys that made Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, that made Neverwinter Nights, that made Dragon Age Origins. I mean, these are like some of my favorite RPGs of all time. And ever since putting out Dragon Age Origins, after that, there's been like this decline for my tastes, and this move away from RPGs, almost like they're afraid to make RPGs. They're like, oh, RPGs are kind of nerdy, or people don't like RPGs. Let's make them more actiony, more like shooters. And they've just been moving more and more in kind of like the action game direction. And that's just been a real bummer for me. So I would love for the RPG lovers at BioWare to, if there are any left, to be cooking up an RPG for RPG fans. Come on, BioWare. Come back to your glory days. All right, moving on to Microsoft now. I did not get an Xbox One. I had a really frustrating experience with the hardware side of the Xbox 360, and after the fiasco of the launch of Xbox One, I was like, okay, guys, forget it. I'm totally done with Xbox, you know. But it's still possible one day they could, you know, get me back into their fold. In the meantime, I just want them to be a great competitor for Sony, because competition will make Sony better. So I just want them to be good and really appealing, but not too good, because I don't want to have to buy another console anytime soon. I love their backwards compatibility focus. I'd love for them to continue in that vein. I'd love for their show to have a really strong game focus and focus on exclusives that will actually release. They've really been having trouble with that, and I'd love to see them kind of recover from that and get some unique intellectual properties that will make their console stand out. If that doesn't work, or maybe better yet, going with just an entirely different strategy. Last year, they talked about this kind of like bridging the gap between Xbox consoles and specifically the Xbox One and PC games. If they could somehow embrace that crossover and allow console players to experience the rich world of PC games without having to like do all the expensive upgrading, all the dumb drivers and stuff like that, just make it freaking user-friendly. And every game to be equally as easy to play and enjoy with a gamepad as it is with a keyboard and mouse. I know that the Steam controller and the Steam machines or Steam boxes or whatever they were called, I think that was an attempt by Valve to try and bring about that kind of like bridging the gap between console gamers and PC gaming. I don't feel like that really was the revolution or the bridge that we really needed. If Microsoft could somehow wow us with a way of making that a reality, that would be huge for video gaming as a whole. That would be a mammoth achievement. And who knows, maybe behind the curtain, they've been working on doing just that. I would love to see that this huge showstopper for them this year. Talking about Bethesda now. Elder Scrolls 6. I know I have no reason to expect it. I have probably many, many reasons not to expect it. But Morrowind came out in 2002, and then 3, 4, 5, 2006. 4 years later, we got Oblivion. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 5 years later, we got Skyrim in 2011. And then 12, 13, 14, if you want to count it, we got Elder Scrolls Online 3 years later. I don't count that. 15, 16, 17. So that puts us at 6 years since Skyrim now. We are overdue, by my estimate, or at the very least due, for an Elder Scrolls 6. Come on! If I can't get an Elder Scrolls 6, and I probably can't, then I will take Skyrim New Vegas. And by that I mean Fallout 3, the engine for Fallout 3 was given to Obsidian, which is an external studio to Bethesda, and they cooked up Fallout New Vegas, this entirely new full-length campaign that used basically all the same systems and gameplay as Fallout 3, but with an entirely new campaign. If I can't get Elder Scrolls 6 in 6 months, then I want an announcement that I'll get Skyrim New Vegas in 6 months. That they have given their engine to some external studio to cook up another Elder Scrolls game or another game set in the Elder Scrolls world that isn't a proper sequel, but is a full-length campaign using the same systems as Skyrim. Come on, come on! If I can't get that, then I want, just whatever they got like 2 or 3 IPs that they've been working on in secret that they're maybe going to reveal. I just want one of them to be, an Elder Scrolls-like open world RPG. That would be fine too. Finally, from Bethesda, hints and rumors seem to be pointing toward a new Wolfenstein game being released. I've really been enjoying Wolfenstein: The New Order. It's a lot of fun. I'd like the sequel to be even more open and more RPG-like, maybe like BioShock, where your character builds his capabilities and his weapons and stuff like that over the course of the game, whereas in The New Order, after a level, you're kind of reset and given a new starting loadout of weapons, and then you have to find the rest in the level that you're in. I'm not a big fan of that. I like developing my character consistently over time and not having the reset button hit. So even if it's not like open world, if it was like a BioShock type of level design and then a BioShock type of character progression design, that would be really cool for me in a Wolfenstein game. Moving on to Ubisoft now. I have in recent years become a big fan of Ubisoft games. I have to qualify that though, because I love the open world structure and all the things that you can do on their maps in, say, the Far Cry games. Big fan of the Far Cry games. And just recently, after kind of being curious about the world after watching the Assassin's Creed movie, I started playing through the games. I'm now like more than halfway through the third game, Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, and I'm really enjoying them, except for some of the story missions can have insta-fail conditions where it's like, don't be spotted or you got to start over. If this person dies, you got to start over. If you don't do this in a certain amount of time, you got to start over. And I've kind of hit like a concentrated stack of missions, story missions in a row that are very much like that. Very frustrating. But apart from that, I really love these games. And so what I love is, as they talk about Far Cry 5, as they talk about the new Assassin's Creed game, I'd like in some way for it to be communicated that no more insta-fail missions. That's kind of in line with my failure adaptivity concept that I'd love to see more of in games. Hey, if Ubisoft could lead the way in that, then suddenly these would become like maybe the ultimate gaming experiences for me. We know we're getting Far Cry 5 in like February of 2018, so my wish for Assassin's Creed then would be for a fall release. And by the fall, I mean October. Give it to me in time for Extra Life. On to Sony now. Once again, I would love a big, strong game focus from Sony, as opposed to talking about new hardware that they're working on or whatever. Games. Always loved more games. I wouldn't mind hearing about a sequel to Horizon Zero Dawn. I'm not done kind of collecting all the collectibles in that open world action RPG, but I'm ready to hear that they're at least working on a sequel, and I'd love to hear that the main character that you're playing as is Silence. Oh man, that would be an interesting character and a potentially very interesting arc to follow over the course of a game. I really don't want Aloy again. She was kind of getting on my nerves. She had a chip on her shoulder pretty much the whole game that never really healed, and she just kind of positioned herself as judge, jury, and yes, even executioner. She just kind of like acted in a very superior manner. And since I can't sit down with Aloy and say, hey, what's going on, and talk to her about that, I just have to listen to her, and I'm getting tired of it. So, Silence, a new protagonist, or a changed Aloy. An Aloy that's, from the start of the game, something major happens to her that just changes her personality in some way to make her just a little more likable. Now, since 2015, I've been asking for this. I want the Snowblind action RPGs available on the PlayStation Network so that I can play them on the PlayStation 4. I probably won't be able to play them on Vita, although that would be cool. I'm talking about Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance, Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance 2, the Justice League Heroes RPG, and Champions of Norath. I'll even take Champions Return to Arms. I would love to see those games on the PlayStation Network. I'd also love to see the Shadow Hearts series on the PlayStation Network, at least the first game in the series. It would be great to see those, even if they don't take the time to kind of up-res them and clean them up and stuff like they've been doing for those PS2 re-releases on the PlayStation Network. Even if they don't do that, I'd still love to get them as they are, so that I can continue playing them, because these are games I keep going back to again and again and again. And my PlayStation 2, I've taken it apart and I have to keep tweaking it to keep it working. It needs lots of love to stay alive. It's been dying for quite a long time, and I may only have days of my PlayStation 2 left. Who knows? Of course, the best solution to that, which I've been asking for since 2015, is PlayStation 2 disc-based backwards compatibility. I really don't think they're going to do that, but I would love for them to just stick an emulator on there and let me just put my discs in and play those games to help preserve them. Like I said, these are great experiences. I want to be able to play them in the future. I can't remember if there's a release date for the new God of War game or not, but as we see more of that, I'd like to know more about what kind of game it is. Seems obvious to me it's not the same, like, beat-em-up almost that the original God of War games were, that maybe it's a little bit open world. Someone suggested to me maybe it'll be something like Horizon Zero Dawn. I would love it if it had some RPG systems so that I don't have to be really good at having quick reflexes, to get through the game, that I can kind of grind my way out of trouble if I need to. So yeah, more about the systems of God of War, and I would love to discover that it's my kind of game, which is going to be more of like an action RPG type of experience. This is a long shot. I know it's been advertised as like coming exclusively to Xbox One for console players, but I would love to see Path of Exile coming to PlayStation 4, or at least word that, now that it's coming to Xbox One, yes, it will also be coming to PlayStation 4. That seems like a really logical choice to me. If you make it for one console, you ought to be able to put it on the other. So I really hope that's the case. I really do enjoy Path of Exile, but at the end of the day, after I've been doing this all day with a mouse, I don't want to do that. I want to do this, not this. I want to do this. So let me do this with Path of Exile. And, I've got a Steam controller. I technically could do this, but I want it to be designed to be fun to do with this. Nintendo! I am almost as much not a Nintendo person as I am not an Xbox person these days. I don't see any reason at all for me to buy a Switch. It just doesn't have the kinds of experiences on it that I want to have, but that could change. One thing that wouldn't really make a difference for my purchasing, but that I would love to see, that I've wanted to see from them since 2015, is a change in their YouTube policies. It doesn't really affect me. I'm not like, I certainly don't have the number of views to get, to earn money from my YouTube channel. And I'm thinking of this less for me and more for other YouTubers. I would just like for them to have a better relationship with the people who are celebrating and enjoying their games and sharing them with other people online. If you're not aware, basically, anything that has any kind of Nintendo type of product as part of the content on YouTube, they are going to claim the right to put ads on that video and get all the money from those ads. But like right now, I don't really want to have annoying ads either pop up at the beginning of one of my videos or like a big long one that's going to play, at the beginning that people are going to be forced to watch. I don't want that for my viewers. I've experimented with ads now and then, but it's really not something that I want to be doing regularly at all. And that's one reason why, even if I were to get a Switch, I don't know that I would do any Nintendo-based content on YouTube. Maybe not so much because of the ads, but because, who knows how mercenary they're going to get or how mean-spirited or, they just make me nervous. I'm even a little bit nervous just to say Nintendo or put Nintendo in my tags for this video. Like they might come and, get mad at me or something. I know that's ignorant. They probably wouldn't do that, but they just make me nervous. Stop making YouTubers nervous, Nintendo. Find a way to protect your properties as you have the right to do, but also have good relationships at the same time. Now, what would make me potentially buy a Switch? Well, maybe Zelda Maker. I've been wanting this kind of a game ever since Mario Maker was released. I think that there's so much more potential for a Zelda Maker than there is for a Mario Maker game, so I would love to see that happen. What might make the Switch an insta-buy for me is if they get the Virtual Console and the eShop figured out and get, every Nintendo game in history on the eShop, so that the Switch is now a console that will play every Nintendo game ever published. That would be awesome. At the very least, what might make the Switch an insta-buy purchase for me is if they put all of the Symphony of the Night clone Castlevania games available for digital download to play on the Switch. I love Castlevania Symphony of the Night. I love that type of gameplay. I think we need a new name for Metroidvanias, because a lot of people call a game a Metroidvania game when really it's just more like a Super Metroid game. It doesn't have the RPG elements that Castlevania Symphony of the Night has. And they made more games just like that in the Castlevania series for handhelds on the Game Boy Advance and for the Nintendo DS. I can play my Game Boy Advance Castlevania games on a big screen because I have a Retron 5, but I don't have a way to put the DS Castlevania games on the big screen, so I would love to be able to do that. That could be an insta-buy for the Switch for me if they make that happen. I'd also love, for Nintendo's sake, for the industry's sake as a whole, for Nintendo to just kind of get more consumer-friendly. This is kind of connected to the YouTube stuff, and just kind of know their fans more. I feel like there's just a disconnect that Nintendo doesn't really understand or respond really in the way to the degree that I think a lot of people would like them to the desires and the interests of their most passionate fans. If they don't do that, if they can't do that, or if they're unwilling to do that, then actually I'd kind of prefer that they crash and burn and become a software company, so that some of these great IPs that I don't really care about, I'm not a Mario person or a Zelda person, but I know a lot of gamers do, are no longer being held hostage on a console that just doesn't really have any experiences that gamers want apart from these Nintendo-specific intellectual properties. All right, my wishes for the PC gaming conference. In general, I just like no repetition of console announcements that have been made on stages for Sony or Microsoft or Ubisoft or whatever. Just give me new and fresh original announcements, exclusive announcements. I'd also love a focus on indie games or games that have low system requirements, because I do enjoy playing PC games, but I usually play games that are about 10 years old, so because I don't bother keeping my video card updated and stuff like that. And so I'd love to see, them giving some attention to those types of games for PC gamers like me that are not like PC master race gamers, but we do like to do some PC gaming now and then. I know I'm asking a lot here. I don't think this is going to happen, but no more AMD conversation ads where they bring the lady out, she has this briefcase, she opens it up, and they show the new video card or whatever, like, oh, and I know that I'm being totally selfish with this wish list, okay? I recognize that that's probably really cool for a lot of PC gamers, so on your behalf, I don't wish for them to take that away, but if I'm just speaking purely selfishly, my own wish list, that doesn't interest me at all. It's why I don't often watch the PC conference live, and I just, watch it later, on YouTube or something and skip that part. And this one comes back to kind of my wish list for Microsoft, but I'd love to see more games. In fact, I'd love to see all PC games going forward. This is a big wish. Recognize that the gamepad is preferred for many, and make their games in such a way that they can be played just as easily and with just as much enjoyment on the gamepad as with keyboard and mouse. I know. You can go ahead and just express whatever you want to express about that idea in the comments. This is my wish list. This is what I want, because again, I do this all day. I don't want to do this during my free time. I want to do this during my free time. So if they could make this possible for every PC game and it be enjoyable and smooth and intuitive, that would rock. And I don't mean for them to take away mouse and keyboard. I don't want to take that away from anybody. I just want to add this. All right, I will wrap up my wish list with just some wishes for games in particular. I would love a BioShock 4. I've been wanting this since 2015. I feel like it's been hibernating for long enough. I don't know if anybody's working on anything with it. Maybe it's been said that nobody's working on it for sure, but I would love to be surprised with an announcement for BioShock 4 or for a Singularity 2. If you haven't played Singularity, when it released, it came out like in the middle of the BioShock series and was called a ripoff of BioShock by many, but now when we have this complete lack of any BioShock games, it's actually a great game to enjoy to kind of scratch that itch. If you haven't checked it out, I highly recommend it. A year or two ago, one of the devs tweeted, going back to Katorga 12, which is the name of the island that Singularity takes place on, and I thought there would be some kind of E3 announcement or something. There's been no word to my knowledge since then. I would love to get an announcement that Singularity 2 is coming. I'd love a Justice League action RPG in like open world, like open city with a single player focus. So like a Justice League DC Universe game in like the Saints Row game engine. Oh man, there's so much potential there. I feel like, as I watch these Injustice videos of like the story for Injustice and Injustice 2, I'm like, wow, they got these great interesting costume designs and they got these great voice actors and they got this interesting story. I feel like, oh, isn't that kind of being wasted on a fighting game? Don't be mad at me. I'm an RPG player. I don't like fighting games. So I would love to get those artists and those writers and those voice actors involved in creating a story for an open world DC Universe single player action RPG. Oh my gosh. I'd like a new Snowblind action RPG. Now, Snowblind is a studio dissolved. I don't think it's been reconstituted in any way, but more of action RPGs in that vein, specifically Diablo clones that don't involve swarming the player with enemies, but instead have fewer enemies on screen, and for combat and interacting, hitting, attacking those enemies, being hit by those enemies is more meaningful on an enemy by enemy basis, instead of just thinking of the enemies as swarms. I mean, it can get to the point when I'm playing Diablo 3 that I almost feel like I'm playing this really fast-paced, real-time strategy game, instead of with like my guy going against these big units that are coming and attacking, instead of fighting individual enemies or 2 or 3 enemies at most. I'd love for there to be news that Pillars of Eternity 2 is coming to console. I really enjoyed the first one, but again, not so good. Much better. I would love to see Pillars of Eternity 2 coming to console. PS4 specifically, of course. Bloodstained is basically a clone of the Castlevania Symphony of the Night formula being made by the same person who designed that series of games. And I'd love to get a release date for that and other indie games that mimic that Symphony of the Night formula. And I'd like to get 2017 release dates. That's probably totally unrealistic, but I'd sure like that. Dragon Quest XI is coming out in Japan, I think at the end of June or July. No word yet on whether or not it's going to be coming out in the US. I really want it to be announced at E3 that Dragon Quest XI is coming to the US in the fall at the latest. So October, because again, I would love to play this one for Extra Life. So Dragon Quest XI in the US no later than Extra Life, please. And if you haven't figured it out yet, I'm a big RPG fan, so I would just like more RPGs. I always love to hear about new RPGs, whether they're turn-based, although with turn-based these days, I do like to have some kind of like a timed button press element like the Shadow Hearts games have, to keep me a little bit more engaged and on the edge of my seat. But I love turn-based games. I love open-world RPGs. I love action RPGs, so just give me more RPGs. That'll make me pretty happy. All right, let's look at some of your wishes from those of you on the forums at christiangeekcentral.com. Michael.withers says, if you give me the old 8-bit and 16-bit Koei, I don't know how you say that, games, I'd probably spring for a Switch. I would love to see something like a remake of Uncharted Waters, a high seas age of sail, explore, and trade and pirate game. They could even use the Napoleon/Empire Total War ships and graphics. That would be cool. Or a Total War version like they had Spartan Total Warrior. Rickster says, do I need to mention Kingdom Hearts 3? He also says story trailer and release date for Insomniac's Spider-Man, story trailer for the new God of War game, Super Mario Maker for the Switch, information on Square Enix's Avengers game, some good PlayStation VR game, Final Fantasy VII Remake info, an Xbox One exclusive that makes me want to get the system. And he says, I'm hoping for a new Tomb Raider game, Fall of the Tomb Raider maybe. And finally, a Spyro the Dragon remake. And Adam Collings says, man, if they did backwards compatibility on PS3 games, I'd almost consider getting a PS4 someday. Of course, given my track record, I'd move up and then they'd announce the PS5, so I'm probably better off just waiting for the PS5. I hold out zero hope they'll implement backwards compatibility of any type, though. Just can't see it happening. Man, Adam, I seriously hope you're wrong. One thing I've found valuable and that's allowed me to enjoy E3 a whole lot more is, despite kind of like celebrating some of my dreams and stuff like that, keeping my expectations in check. I think that's really important because, there's a history of E3 of games being announced that are canceled or not released. I mean, we have the Phantom Dust remake. Ion was a game announced for Microsoft in 2015, and that just kind of disappeared into the ether. Fable Legends, Scalebound, these games just were announced. They were given a lot of attention. Nothing ever happened. There are also games that end up disappointing us despite the hype that E3 gives for them, like Mass Effect Andromeda got mixed reviews from a lot of people. No Man's Sky got a generally negative reaction from reviewers and I think a lot of players. Assassin's Creed Unity launched with a bunch of bugs and stuff, and it just had a rough time. And I Am Setsuna, for my tastes, I thought it was good, but it had a kind of a repetitive visual design and obscured mechanisms in the gameplay. So we just have to, I think, remember E3 is like, it's good for celebrating games, but to not hang our hopes for fun and fulfillment on the promises made at E3. Along the same lines, we might ask, is there anything useful from the Bible that can guide our hopes and even our prayers as we enjoy all the excitement and buzz around E3? And I think definitely. For me, first off, I've found a helpful tip for enjoying E3 biblically is this. There's a fine line between enjoying something immensely and making it an unhealthy priority. We hyperbolically say that we love games, and I'm even getting animated right now talking about it. Part of that is to hopefully hold your interest. Keep watching, keep watching. But keeping ourselves from genuinely deeply loving them or seeking contentment in them or trying to find our identity in them. If we avoid those things, I think that will save us from a lot of trouble. Getting angry because an entertainment property we enjoy is being mishandled strikes me as a sign that we are too personally invested in that property. We're counting on it to bring us not just pleasure, but fulfillment and contentment. But that kind of fulfillment and contentment is short-lived and usually gives too much credit to the wrong source. 1 John chapter 2, verses 15 through 17 in the ESV reads, "Do not love the world or the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the desires of the flesh and the desires of the eyes and pride in possessions, is not from the Father, but is from the world. And the world is passing away, along with its desires. But whoever does the will of God abides forever. The Greek word for love here means to love dearly or to be contented with. Now, it's great to enjoy our hobbies and our nerdly delights. I mean, after all, everything good in life ultimately has its source in God. Now, sure, there are tons of creative humans involved that should be thanked, but they have their creative abilities because of how God has gifted them or inspired them through his creation of the world or other people that he's created. God is the ultimate source of the created things that we enjoy. So if we dearly love our hobbies, if we cling to them and view them as our source of contentment in life or rescue from the things in life that are bothering us, then we are out of connection with a love relationship with God at that point. By contrast, the more we love God, the more we'll constantly be reminded that, you know what, this world falls infinitely short of who he is, and that we really shouldn't expect that much from it. And that puts us in a position to enjoy entertainment when it's fun and not get upset when it's not. It's also important and right that we give credit to God for all the amazing things he has made possible in the world of entertainment, and yet without obsessing over those things themselves. Paul teaches that we shouldn't have these intense, self-centered desires for possessions, and that this is actually the same as worshiping something in place of God. We can see more about that in Ephesians chapter 5, verses 3 through 5. When we fixate our passions and obsessions on something created instead of our Creator, it's kind of like being treated to dinner at someone's house and telling your hamburger, "Oh, you're so delicious. I love you so much," and while eating it, and then never even saying thank you to the person who made the burger for you. James 1:15 in the ESV reads, "Every good gift and every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation or shadow due to change." The things that we enjoy will all fade. You've probably had that experience of getting really excited about something and then the experience ends, or it doesn't live up to your expectations. So everything that we enjoy, it doesn't last, it fades. But God does not change. He is the ultimate source of creativity and excellence. So both before and after complimenting the work of humans, as we should be crediting and loving him more than anyone else for the entertainment that we enjoy. So as you see things from E3 that just kind of get you excited or blow your mind, allow yourself to quickly take your thoughts to God and just think, wow, God, you are amazing that you could orchestrate humanity in such a way that something like this is possible. That's it from me for right now. Have fun watching all the E3 coverage on the web, and then I hope you'll come back here to get my reactions and to share yours as well. Have fun, and thanks for watching. Bye-bye.